This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, compulsively punchable.
He's the kind of guy who you'd probably just punch on the arm really hard if you ever met him.
Worshipped by feminists.
He pokes fun at feminism and women, just joking around, his whole sandwich making thing.
Mildly inspiring.
Yes, I recommend the Ben Settle Show, and anybody who isn't on it, that's their own loss.
Somewhat authentic.
Ben is a very distinct personality. There's no fluff. I can't stand fluff.
Syrupy sweet.
Tells it like it is, and sometimes may not be the most polite manner, shall we say.
Kind of useful.
So I have spent tens of thousands of dollars on coaching and masterminds, and I've learned more from Ben Settle's podcast than from any of that.
Semi-intelligent.
Ben sounds like a crazy guy at times, but he's one of the smartest individuals in marketing I've ever met.
Mostly forgettable.
He's always in the forefront of my mind.
The BenSettle.com podcast begins now.
This is Ben Settle, the BenSettle.com podcast. And we're going to do another email players rules, which has become kind of like, I don't know if I call it a cult favorite, but certainly favorites amongst the long-term listeners, Jonathan. I think you'll agree.
The Horde favorite.
The Horde favorite. I love that. That is the new official word. The Horde favorite. Yes. The Horde favorite email players rules, which is an idea that I got from the Beige Phillips show, which is a show by comedian Dante Nero. And it's a show about helping guys get their balls back, basically, relationship show. Very good show for guys who need that kind of help. A little too raunchy for some people, but you can see through all that, you'll be just fine. And he has these things called the Beige Phillip rules, which is kind of put his principles and maxims together into a set of rules. And I thought, I'm going to do that with my show. Because there's a lot of maxims and ideas and principles and ideas that I live by, and not just business, but my personal life too, that have been a tremendous help. Some I've discovered on my own, some I've observed other people doing, some I've seen taught. It really doesn't, they come from all kinds of directions and all types of sources. But I have found that these have been tremendously helpful. We've done 126 so far, so we're going to do another 7 today. And so it'll be, Jonathan, you ready? Are you standing by? Are you ready for another 7? Because I can put this off for another week if you want. All right. All right. Is Cupcake ready? Is she listening?
Okay. Yeah, she might be, hopefully.
Okay. So Cupcake's listening and you're listening. Really, the only 2 listeners I care about are listening. So email players rule number 127. Always be patient, but never waste time either. Now, Jonathan, I'm a big fan of patience. This is And you're a big fan of patience. In fact, if I remember correctly, the old Ben Settle Show podcast episode about patience was very life-changing for you, was it not? Or am I getting that mixed up with another one?
It really was eye-opening about the patience, and I practiced it for a little while, but kind of not so patient anymore.
Well, I'll tell you what. Patient man gets what he wants. But patience is powerful because it gives you power because so few people have it. So it's a whole chapter of my villains book is just about patience. And, people who are patient, I know it's not easy. Especially in today's day and age of nobody wants to delay gratification and all that. But patience is powerful. Now, it doesn't mean you waste time though either. So, you can be patiently waiting for one thing. Doesn't mean life stops and you stop working on other stuff. This is where people go wrong a lot. They'll become real patient. They're masters at patience, but then they'll stop going forward altogether while they're waiting. You don't want to do that either. So here's a minor example of this. This is kind of a recent one. My 4th Enoch Wars book, Evil's Child. While I was waiting, I had never rushed the cover artist, Kirk Dalponce. I'm not going to rush him. He's one of the best in the business. The guy is just an incredible talent at this. I'm not rushing him. Very patient. I don't even check in and say, hey, how's it going with that? I don't even bother him with that. I don't want his brilliance to be held back in any way, especially not being annoyed with me asking all the time. So I patiently wait for it, but I don't stop working on the next book while I'm waiting. Right? I'm patiently waiting for that, but I still go forward on the next book. So it is with business. Anything that you need to be patient with, you don't maybe you're waiting on a client to get back to you or something. It doesn't mean you stop going forward looking for other clients and wasting your time and just sitting on your thumbs all day. And, this seems like a very basic thing, but how many people really, a lot of people do this kind of stuff, Jonathan. And it's my job to put a stop to it. Period. End of discussion. Everybody can go home now. Well, wait, before we go to the next
Drop the mic.
Drop the mic. I'm going to drop the phone. Okay, so email players rule number 128. Instead of obsessing over better open rates, obsess with becoming a better email copywriter. So I don't know how many times, Jonathan, I have to go through how open rates are so inaccurate. There are reasons you might want to track them, Like, for example, if you want to remail unopens, that's fine. That's a very good thing to do. I'm not motivated enough to do it, but that's okay if you do. Or just to test the overall health of your list. I think if you're doing emails right, you'll know, though, because you'll get replies from people who have Gmail, so you know Gmail's being delivered. But open rates, for one thing, the smartphones have made it so that they're not accurate. They're not even, like the Android phones at least, have HTML turned off by default. That means they're not registering your opens. So iPhones, I think, are a little different, but Android's not. Plus, I've been told recently, and I believe this to be the fact, that Gmail now like hosts the remote images on something else other than in your email, which does or something like that. I may be explaining that wrong, but Jim Yagi could explain this better than I could. And computer scientist Jim Yagi, where that it's not necessarily even registering your Gmail opens very accurately, or it's like screwing them up all over the place. So example of this was last January. I got this testimonial from Email Player subscriber. He's like, Ben, I used your methods in December for my client in a month where they really get very few sales, if any. And we've just gotten all these more sales that month than we do all the other months using your methods, which of course was a nice props for me. I'll take the props. But he goes, here was his problem. He goes, but I'm only getting 9% open rates. I really like to get these opens up. So Jonathan, he's doing more sales than they've ever gotten in December and worried about open rate. And only 9%. I can assure you that it's more than 9%. They're just not being tracked properly because of technology. So instead of obsessing over open rates, which is a very amateur thing to do, in my opinion, obsess over some open rates which you cannot control at all. You're better off obsessing over making yourself a better email copywriter. Sitting down, coming every day, writing emails and getting better at it and thinking about it and studying emails and studying communication in general, studying talk radio, studying the great comedians, studying the great sitcoms, studying things, the great communicators and orators, studying the great copywriters. Do that and write a lot and apply the things you learn. And the open rates, all that will take care of itself. I can promise you that. Become a better copywriter, a better marketer, better salesperson, better at persuasion. And you can control that. You cannot control how many people open your emails. So that's a whole goal setting thing in and of itself. I like to have goals that I can control, things I can control. If I need to lose some weight, I can't control how much weight I lose, but I can control eating better and exercising more. And so
you can't control the fat in a Big Mac?
I cannot control the fat in the Big Mac. I would love to control the fat in the Big Mac, but so be it. Email Players rule number 129. Jonathan, seek ye not the Facebook like, but the hate. So everybody wants to be liked on there, right? They all want likes. I go for hate on there, or I go for like some kind of irritant. I want to be an irritant. And so the people who like my stuff genuinely like it and aren't just doing it because, oh, everybody's liking it. They're actually liking it because they genuinely do, because I'm actually trying to repel. So for example, in El Bembo's Lair at one time, I was doing some really controversial stuff. I posted a pro-shaming post in there, Jonathan. I was pro-shaming. I am pro-shaming, actually. I'm pro-fat shaming. I'm pro every shaming. I think shaming works. It has always worked. It's just that nowadays the mush cookies say it doesn't work. And it's too bad because there's a lot of people that are in bad health because they're not being shamed, because they're being told it's okay. I just got an email. This is so ironic. I should read this actually. I'm going to read this. Hold on. Let me open my messenger real quick here. I just got this from Dan Meredith today. Dan Meredith and I we have very interesting conversations. One day him and I will have to do like some kind of joint podcast together because we're really bad. We're really bad when we get together. We're so obnoxious. But he sent me this email today, or this Facebook message today. He said, he goes, what makes me think you will find this funny? And he sent me a link to a news site the headline is this: Fat acceptance activist dead from heart attack at 34.
Oh, now, nice.
Nobody shamed that girl. I guarantee you nobody shamed her. Nobody shamed her and said, look, here's why you're dying right now and why you're a bad example for people right now. What you're doing to your body is not healthy. It's not good. Now, that's fine if you want to be that way, but don't sit there and promote it like it's healthy, like some of these people do. Am I saying now people are going to listen to this thing, I hate fat people? That's not true. That's not true at all. In fact, I've been in the weight loss market. I have more empathy for them than most people do. In fact, and shaming does work. It just has to be done the right way. You can't do it maliciously. Malicious shaming will do nothing for anybody. And I got to be very clear about this because there's some people who don't understand context. They can't read and they're not listening to what I'm saying because they're too caught up in the shaming thing right now that they're ignoring everything else I'm saying. Let me repeat this. You cannot do it maliciously. You have to do it because you actually care. And you don't do it like in a finger pointing way. That's what I'm talking about. Here's an example, Jonathan. And this was an email that did very well. And it was for a blood sugar supplement that I wrote. And I told the story of Patrice O'Neill. Patrice O'Neal, he died in 2011, an overweight comedian. He had like a blood sugar of like 500 or something when he was in his 20s. I mean, the dude is not in good shape. He had diabetes. He was suffering from that. He just did not take his weight very seriously. He was just a really obese guy. And, he probably had the attitude of, well, so what? Blah, blah, blah. It's my right and all. And that's fine. Okay, that's fine. But I told the story about, and this is a true life story. I told this in an email. He woke up one day and he couldn't move his legs. Could not move his legs. Calls his girlfriend in a panic. Later that day, he couldn't move his arms. And I don't know if it was another day or two or whatever. Soon he couldn't open his mouth. He couldn't breathe on his own. Eventually, he couldn't even open his eyes. He was just existing in his body because, he let himself, nobody shamed him properly. I guarantee it. Nobody told him a story about what could happen to him. Now, that could happen to anybody who's obese right now. And you can have a diabetic. I think it's a stroke that you can get from diabetes. And it's that you are existing in your own body, just like the guy in the Metallica video 1, who's like destroyed, but his whole body's like practically destroyed. He's living like an amoeba or a starfish in his body. So is that something we should not bring up to people? We should just sit there and say, it's okay. You just be who you are.
No way.
If you really love somebody, of course not. So you could say in a way that telling that story is a way to shame people into wanting to change themselves because I do care about them. Or I could be like the people who just pretend to care and say, it's okay. You just be you. It's all good. You're beautiful inside and out. You're beautiful inside and out. Jonathan, I know you're 600 pounds, but you're beautiful inside and out. Okay? And don't let anyone tell you different.
Thank you. I'm glad you noticed.
When you're existing in your own body like a starfish and you can't move, it's okay. Just it's okay. No, that's not how it works. If you really care about people, you shame the hell out of them. But you do it in a way that's not malicious. And thus, on Facebook, if you do that on Facebook, you'll get the hate, not the like, but you're going to do more good than bad. So seek not the Facebook like, but the hate. Email players rule number 1. And by the way, I already know, God, I have to go back. I got to preempt the horseshit that's coming my way from saying all this. What about people this? What about people that? Listen, I know there are certain circumstances, okay, where people are temporarily in a situation that they have this is just what's happening, okay? It happened to my friend Shane Hunter, okay? He had his health was in from car wrecks and all this stuff. His back was in 10 out of 10 pain, okay? He was not, the medications he was on, there's no way he was going to be in good shape during those days. But he didn't stay that way. If you looked at pictures of when he was going through that compared to now, it's a totally different guy. And that's my whole point. Okay, now he didn't need to be shamed, but that's what I'm saying. Like if he did, I would have done it for him because I'm his friend. And I would have done it in a way that's not malicious and not finger pointing and any of that. But don't give me these excuses. Oh, I'm doomed to be, a somnambulent sloth the rest of my life. It's bull crap. You're not. So I don't want to hear it. Anyway, on the email players rule number 130. Good things happen to those who write. Now, we talk about patience. The good things happen to those who wait, which I don't always agree with, by the way. But good things do happen to those who write every day. I'll give you some examples, Jonathan. First of all, you're a living example of this. Are you not?
Thank you. Yeah. I the best decision I ever made was to follow your system and write every day because it unlocked a lot of potential that I didn't even know I had.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? This is the beauty of it. So I'm going to give a real life example of how this could work. I mean, the power of just writing every day. First of all, there's a girl named Christy Johnson who we've talked about on the show, and she did like a 90-day thing where she wrote every day for 90 days, and her life completely changed. I mean, I've got a long testimonial from her about this. I don't know if she's still doing it or not, but at the time, I mean, I couldn't have been more proud. She kicked butt, and it wasn't just sales. It was opportunities that arose and joint ventures and all these things that never would have happened if she hadn't been writing every day, emails. But it's not just emails. So in El Bembo's lair, I like to have a scribe, someone who goes through all the posts every day and summarizes everything for people because there's so many things going on sometimes. And the person who does that, her name is Marlene. She's an email player subscriber. I cannot remember how to pronounce her name off the top of my head. Sorry, Marlene. But you know, I think the world of you, Marlene. And she does this every day. She doesn't even get paid for it. In fact, I want her to get paid for it, so I told her to put a PayPal tip jar down there. And I shamed people into donating to her, Jonathan. I do, because she works hard on it. But she does this every day, and she's getting really good at writing entertaining content. So I can just tell you right now, whenever somebody emails me or contacts me saying, Ben, do you know a content writer? I always refer them to Marlene. I always do. Why? Because she writes every day. She shows up every day and writes and gets into it, and she's getting better all the time. And I would tell anyone listening to this, if you want a content writer, let me know, and I will put you in touch with Marlene. She's awesome at this. And so it is. So, and I've done this for other people too, like who write all the time and they need, like, especially content writers are hard to find. Good content writers are hard to find, who know my ways especially. So good things come to those who write. So stop not writing and start writing, period. Just start writing an email every day. I don't know why I have to keep saying this, Jonathan, but I'm going to keep saying it until everybody I know on this planet is doing it. All right. Email players rule number 131. Dive bars are for pros. So I don't know, Jonathan. It's so funny because when you're now you've been married a while now, so you don't have to deal with like these single girls who are into irrelevant things. You know how many girls love dive bars and they like brag about how they go to dive bars? Like this is the thing. Oh yeah, really? Man, I went to a dive bar. It's so fun. Me and my friends like to go to dive bars. I'm like, you are hanging out with pros, right? And I'm talking about now girls who are pros, who cares? But I'm talking about business girls I know in business who brag about going to dive bars. And then they're the ones that are always complaining they can't find a good guy. Is there no coincidence? Dive bars are for pros. If you want to be around pros, fine. If you're a business person, you should want to be influenced not by pros, but by actual successful business people. In the business world, the dive bar version of that are these cheap internet marketing seminars and events and masterminds. Not the good ones. There's some really good ones out there. So I'm not downing all of them. And even some of the low price ones are actually pretty good. But there are some dive bars out there as far as, you know, the equivalent of dive bars. Girls like to go to dive bars because they get attention and all this stuff. And, you know, they think it's cool and they think they're being cool. And that's why people go to these cheap internet marketing seminars. They get attention. They get shown, like, you know, they get entertained a little bit. They get to walk away all inspired. They get dressed up with nowhere to go, basically. They don't actually implement anything, but it's like an addiction. It's like the dive bar. It's basically what it is. Now, there are good ones. So, for example, Brian Kurtz has a really good mastermind and really good master classes. I heard John Carlton, who I don't know, but I've heard this from a couple people, actually. Deb Law specifically was telling me how he doesn't even allow, like, the people in the mastermind, he doesn't even, like, allow their girlfriends to come with. Now, a lot of these masterminds, you can usually bring your plus one or whatever. Now, he doesn't let you, which I think is a good idea, by the way. I think it should all be guys, actually, Jonathan. Me being the sexist misogynist I am, I think they should just be guys. I think when I come out of a mastermind, there should be a hot meal waiting for me, personally. Now, I don't know if I'm out of line on this, Jonathan. I'm going to catch shit for that. I'm going to catch some crap for that one, too, because from people who don't understand context or satire, but that's perfect. That's what I want. But that's the thing. You can tell if something's good by if there's a little bit of a barrier for you to even get in there in the first place. The best clubs, the best bars, whatever, the best restaurants usually you have to do reservations and have a waiting list and all that. And you have to be on the list to get in. Dive bars, they'll just let anybody in there. Well, it's the same with these, like, that's how you should be looking at these internet marketing seminars and stuff. How easy is it really that easy to show up and everybody, I'm not saying they're all bad, but you may want to go to the ones where they qualify you a bit. That's all I'm saying. With our Wine Villains event in Napa for next month, or is it this month? I don't know where we're at right now, but in July, believe me, Troy Browser, I had him doing he partnered me at this. We had him close everyone on the phone. It was not like, oh, just go to this link. We wanted him to talk to everybody so he could kind of like weed out the low-class jackass people who just want to go to get drunk or whatever. We don't want that. We didn't want just a bunch of drunken slobs showing up. And so, you know, it was kind of hard to get in there. Nice. And we raised the price, you know, considerably after a certain point because we weren't just allowing everybody. Email players rule number 132, Jonathan, be patient and your patience will be rewarded. What do you think of that one, Mr. Patience?
Well, actually, I guess it works. I feel like patience and then focus kind of go together. So this might be a little bit of both.
And you will be rewarded for both, as opposed to people who are impatient and with no focus. So my goal now is to get you to be more patient. And I can teach you this because all I have to do is be my normal, obnoxious self, and it'll force you to be more patient. That's why I look at it. Email players rule number 133, Jonathan, before we wrap this one up. Being boring is a curable disease. This is good news, Jonathan, for everybody listening to this who's boring, right? or who thinks they don't.
Yay!
And it's not like, you know, it's funny because a lot of people who think they're boring really aren't. They just don't understand, like they're just holding back in some way. It's a curable disease. If you're boring, it is a choice. You can choose to be boring and be irrelevant and not get your precious social media engagement, or you can choose to be interesting. And you can become interesting simply by doing interesting things and knowing your market and studying them and finding out what's interesting to them and let those two things meet together in the middle. That's how you become interesting and not boring. Very simple, Jonathan. That's so simple. I don't even know how to make it, more easier to understand than that. It is a curable disease. If you're boring, if your marketing is boring, if your emails are boring, when you give talks, if those are boring, and most talks are boring, if you're doing a podcast and most podcasts are boring, it's your fault. It's a disease, but it is curable, and you have the cure. If you still need help with that, you just keep following what I'm doing here on the bensettle.com podcast. And you can try to learn to not be boring through osmosis. And that's assuming I'm not boring, Jonathan. That's kind of takes a lot for me to say that, doesn't it? It's kind of daring for me to just assume I'm not boring. Because for all I know, you and I are the only two people listening to this right now. So
and Cupcake.
And Cupcake. But see, that, you guys, I think I've got your attention, so I'm doing okay. Cupcake doesn't just listen to everybody. No, she's got standards. So there you go. Anyway, I don't know what we're going to talk about next week, Jonathan. I have no idea, but it'll be something that's not boring. That much I can guarantee.
I'll leave you guys with an Eleanor Roosevelt quote: "Never be bored, and you'll never be boring."
There you go.
Pretty simple. So that is a wrap for another bensettle.com podcast. We brought you the email players rules 127 through 133. We'll be back with you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
You've been listening to the bensettle.com podcast. To get your hands on a free issue of Ben Settle's prestigious $97 per month email players newsletter, simply go to www.bensettle.com.
This is the podcastfactory.com.